Be advised, the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Magandang gabi po sa inyo lahat. Welcome to our show, Heartbeat.
Ay, marami pong salamat.
Marami rin yung lalaki, ayaw rin ng divorce.
Change, meaning introduction of new policies.
At natutuwa ako na
And all that, or just katito.
buwan ng linggo ng kanyang panunungkulan.
It went from 5 peso and 30 centavos.
Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Welcome to our show, Heartbeat Live. Alam po ninyo, itong ating panghuling programa sa taong ito. Pero meron pa tayo next year. Hindi ibig sabihin huling programa na po ito. Huli na nyo kung beses makikita dito sa programang ito. Only for this year. Sisikapin po natin pag-usapan ang mga bagay na mahalaga para sa atin. Lalo-lalo na ang nakaraan. Alam po niyo, merong kasabihan dito sa ating mga Pilipino. Di ba ang sinasabi nila? Kung hindi mo titingnan ang iyong pinanggalingan, mahirap kang makarating sa iyong pupuntahan. Kailangan maganda ang pananaw natin at buo ang ating pananaw sa mga nangyari. At kung meron tayong mga leksyon na kailangan matutuhan sa mga nakaraang pangyayari, ay dapat talaga namang tingnan natin kung ano nangyari. Alam po ninyo, napakadami din namang magagandang at mga importanteng pangyayari dito sa ating bansa, dito sa nakaraang taon, na pag-uusapan natin. Kasi wala naman diyang nangyayari na may mo sabihin, ay naku, napakaganda na wala kang pwedeng maipayo. Tingnan natin ito, baka ito pwedeng ayusin o ganun. So dito, ang tihanap natin dito ay isang pananaw sa mga pangnangyari na objektibo. Hindi lang natin, hindi tayo sumasang-ayon kasi sampalataya tayo dito sa ganitong tao, doon sa ganun tao. Tinitingnan natin objectively ang mga pangyayari at tapos dapat isiya sa natin para makita natin kung tama bang ginawa o pwedeng mabago o pwedeng ma-improve ang paggawa at anong mga leksyon na maaari nating matutunan tungkol sa mga pangyayari. Sapagkat lahat po ng nangyayari sa buhay natin, whether personal o sa bansa, ang katotohanan po ay mayroong leksyon dyan para sa atin, one way or the other. Sometimes the lesson is not so pleasant, at ibang panahon naman, mahusay man ang leksyon na ating makikita. Like it's an affirmation sometimes na ito ang tamang paraan para ayusin itong problemang ito at ito o kaya itong tamang daan, tamang paraan para ayusin yung isang problema dito sa isang lugar na ito. Pero minsan ang madalas merong tama, merong mali o merong hindi masyadong maganda. Kanya yan ang atong titingnan. Alright. I suppose, ang pinakamahalagang pangyayari dito na napakalaking drama dito sa ating bansa, dito sa taon na ito na malapit nang matapos, ay yung impeachment ng former Chief Justice na si Renato Corona. Alam po ninyo, I want to tell you, first of all, hindi ko kilala si Chief Justice Corona. I have never said good morning or hello to him. I see him sometimes from afar, but he's not my friend. I don't have any particular ties with him, and I have nothing pending before his court. But at that time, ang naging matindi ang problema ko dito ay hindi ko sinasabi na hindi siya guilty. Meron tayo sa ating demokrasya na dalawang prinsipyo. Una, you are supposed to be treated as though you are an innocent person until you are proven guilty. Okay. So dito, the presumption of innocence has to be granted to the defendant. Now, it's number one. Pangalawa, ang proseso ng pag-aalis ng ilang mga nakalagay sa pamahalaan, katulad ng presidente, katulad ng Chief Justice, ay sa paraan lamang ng tinatawag nating impeachment. Meaning to say, yung dalawang bahagi ng Kongreso ang siyang maghahatol doon sa Chief Justice at hindi yung mga ordinaryong korte. Bakit kaya nagkaganon? Bakit? Sapagkat ang Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary. Paano ngayon pa huhusgahan mo yung Chief Justice habang siya ay nasa pwesto na ang mga maghahatol sa kanya ay yung mga huwes o mga justices na nasa sa ilalim din niya. Kanya yan, sa constitutionally, in the conduct of a democracy, nilipat yung kapangyarihan ngayon para siyasatin ang ginawa ng Chief Justice kung maraming tumututol dito sa pamamagitan ng dalawang bahagi ng Kongreso. Kailangan yung impeachment resolution ipasok muna sa mas mababang bahay ng Kongreso para dyan dapat masiyasat ang mga akusasyon kontra doon sa ginugustong i-impeach. Kasi alam po ninyo, pagka pinirmahan nila yung impeachment terms and resolution, nagpapatunay sila na meron silang personal na knowledge at kaalaman at ebidensya sa mga nangyari na kanilang inaakusa sa sino man tao na gustong i-impeach, whether that's the Chief Justice, the President, or whomever. Or like, for example, the Chairman of the Committee can only be impeached. Okay, but the issue that comes up is yung paraan ng pagpapa-aproba. Alam mo, sinasabi nila hindi nakailamang Malacanang. Hindi ko sinasabing nakailamang Malacanang. Kanya lang, nadinig naman nyo dito sa programa, nagkaroon tayo ng testigo dito mula sa isang membro ng Kongreso na hindi po pinag-aralan o siniyasat sa pamamagitan ng isang sesyon yung impeachment accusations against the Chief Justice. At ang sinabi doon, ginawa na lang dyan, pumirma ka, kung ayaw mong pumirma, tanggal ka bukas. You know, it was such a crude method of doing it that I don't think it did us any good, and I don't think it was something we ought to be proud of. Now, the fact that the House passed it by an overwhelming majority, and ngayon, tumuloy ngayon yung impeachment complaint yan to the Senate, whereupon the senators then sat down and acted as justices, as judges over the impeachment trial. Ngayon, ano naging problema dyan? Of course, eventually, nagbotohan sila at pagkatapos they found and they convicted the Chief Justice as guilty. But what troubles me is that they had about 8 articles of complaint. Binitawan nilang lahat at namuno na lang ng parabagang ang natira na lang dito na naging basis to convict the Chief Justice, which may well be true and accurate, is that he did not inform the public about his statement of assets and liabilities and net worth. Ngayon, hindi ko sinasabing hindi, no? Pero dapat dito, kung talagang sisihatin natin sa tamang daan, then lahat ng miyembro ng Justice Department, together with all government officials, should be also charged so that if they have not published their SALNs, at dapat yan ay lumabas. Kasama na ang mga miyembro ng mga opisyal ng pulis, kasama na ang mga opisyal ng Armed Forces of the Philippines, kasama na ang opisyal ng lahat ng nahahalal na tao dito sa ating bansa. That is what ought to be. So, kung tumigil sila ngayon, pagkatapos nilang i-impeach si Corona for failure to file the SALN, dapat yan continued litigation ng lahat ng mga tao na dapat mag-publish at hindi nag-publish. And they should not go back only 1 year, they should go back 10 years. Because the law has been there for more than 10 years. At kung hindi natutupad yung batas na yon, dapat tuparin na maigi ang nangyaring yon. Alright, so dito nakita natin, na sa paraan ng paglilitis dyan, there were many things na nahalata natin na nangingisda yung maraming miyembro ng proseksyon tungkol sa ebidensya. Number 2, we also think, sa aking opinion po, the defense of Justice Corona, ex-Chief Justice Corona, was also not well done. So, I guess the result was also because public opinion now obtains. Sapagkat in an impeachment court po, it's not the strict rules of evidence that matters. And the senators have a lot of discretion about what evidence to allow, what evidence not to allow. There is a semblance of judicial practice in terms of the assessment of testimony and evidence, but they are not bound by strict evidences according to a judicial trial. Okay? So on that basis, I guess you cannot expect them to be very tight, but sa akin, one of the most learned opinions here was the one given by Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago when she voted against convicting Chief Justice Corona. Not because he's not guilty, she did not say that, but because the method and the manner, for example, of obtaining certain evidence violated the law. And that included evidence about his deposits which were obtained without recourse to a judicial order, because the law very clearly says AMLA cannot touch anybody's deposit unless they go through. And there is a court order that is able to assess the evidence to justify inquiry in the accounts of somebody unless it is with that person's consent. Yung may pahintulot yung may account. Okay? So then, she also cited several other legal reasons why she felt the process was lacking. All right. Now, I guess we will have to leave it at that. It is already fact. And Chief Justice Corona has been convicted, so he's out. Now, the question, of course, that we must ask is, all right, natanggal si Chief Justice. In what way and in what form nabago ang ating sistema ng hustisya dito sa ating bansa? Alam po niyo, hanggang naghahanap ako ng sagot. Wala akong makita. Ang ibang nadidinig ko, ha? Alam po ninyo, ang ibang nadidinig ko, lalo lang daw humihirap ngayon ang paraan ng hustisya sapagkat tumataas lang ang taripa ng mga corrupt na mga huwes o justices diyan. Well, iyon ay mga balita lang yun, hindi ko nasasabing totoo. Yun ay nasasagap lang natin. Totoo ba ito? Hindi. Kaya lang, nalalaman natin na ang judicial system natin ay marami talagang kailangang mabago at kailangan maano. Ang tingin ko lang dito, mangyayari ba yan at ano ang pagbabago kaya na matutuklasan? Alright, then we also say, of course, we have a new Chief Justice, si Chief Justice Sereno, and we wish her the best of luck. Kanya lang ito nangyari dito, nagbigay siya ng isang administrative order, kinontra siya ng lahat ng ibang mga justices of the Supreme Court. Which of course was an attempt to try to embarrass her, I think. Even if they were correct, I think there was a way of handling it. But they are not, apparently many people are still very hurt by the appointment of Chief Justice Sereno because they probably felt they are more qualified. Kasi batang-bata pa si Chief Justice Sereno. I think she's only 52 or 53. So it's a young age and she'll be around there for a long, long, long time. But it looks like the other justices are saying, not if they can help it, and they are going to pounce on anything that they perceive na baka sakali, oy, nagkamali dito, babanatan namin ngayon. Which of course is not a very nice attitude. Okay, so yun, marami tayong kailangang maintindihan tungkol yan sa impeachment about how to do it in a more democratic way that follows the observance of the rule of law. Meron kasing batas at proseso dyan na kailangan we try to observe as best as we can. It's not for the senators or the judges and the prosecutor to try to manipulate that any way they like. Okay, so yan po ang ating kailangan makita tungkol dyan. Now, ang susunod na issue na napakahalaga and it became a little bit of a problem and I think it's going to continue to be a problem was yung nangyari po sa Scarborough Shoal na merong mga huhulihin doon na mga nangingisdang in-check doon sa part of our, what we claim is our territory. Pumasok ngayon ng ibang barko ng mga Chinese Navy, pinigil yung paghuli ng mga Chinese fishermen at yun ngayon ang naging problema sapagkat hanggang halos 500 kilometrong layo sa landmass ng China, inaangkin pa rin ng China lahat ng South China Sea. Kung mo tinawag na South China Sea, kanya tinawag na ngayon ang ating pamahalaan, Philippine West Sea. Ayun. Because their claim violates the UNCLOS law, although that is subject to determination by the UN courts that deal on issues of territory. But ito po ang nangyari dito, hindi pa natatapos yung problemang yan. Of course, nagkaroon ng bangayan dito at bakbakan ng konti in terms of dila pa lang naman. Until nagkaroon ng unfortunate development na isang senador, si Senator Trillanes, from China, tumawag daw dito sa... Ayun ang malabas sa mga ulat, no? Na tumawag daw dito kay Presidente Noynoy, tapos siya daw ang magiging backroom operator at siya ang para mag-mediate. Which of course was an unfortunate choice because ayun, nagsalita sa Senado, nireveal yung kanyang role, etc., etc. Sapagkat kung ikaw maglalakad sa likuran at susubukan mong mamagitan sa dalawa para magkaroon ng magandang kalalagayan, una, dapat alam mo, ang interes na protektahan mo, Pilipinas, hindi in China. Kung ikaw ay galing sa Pilipinas, lalong-lalo na kung ikaw ay elected official. At pangalawa, kung ikaw ay nagbabackroom dyan, shut up, don't talk, huwag ka maingay. Let everybody else talk. Pero pag ikay tinanong, wala akong nalalaman dyan. Hindi po pwede kasi ilabas yun. Because then your effectivity as a backroom operator will be absolutely zero. So the question is, why did you offer? nilapitan daw ata siya, according to Senator Enrile, ng isang Chinese intelligence officer, nilapitan siya. Eh bakit mo naman kakausapin? Nang hindi ka nagkukonsulta, at ano ang hinahangad mong mangyari dito? Just to cool down tempers? Alam po ninyo, sa akin tingin, nalaro tayo ng maigi ng China dito and we fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Sana hindi nagawa. Ito, nakikita natin, hindi pa tapos ang problema. Marami pa pong nangyayari dyan na kailangan nating lutasin. And you can see now that many times, malabas sa dyaryo, that it looks like we want to have a bigger American presence dito sa Pilipinas by way of military facilities as well as soldiers, etc., etc., simply as part of the jockeying position to show that we are not totally helpless, although there is a question whether America will ever provide the muscle in the event that there is some kind of shooting in the Scarborough Shoal. Well, sa akin dito, China of course always has the option, which I think and they should try to take at kunin nila, na to be magnanimous here kasi hindi po maaaring alisin na magkapit-bahay tayo eh. Abay, di mas maganda na yon na malayong-malayo naman sa pader mo at mas malapit sa pader ko, eh wag mo nang angkinin. At sa hindi komot, mayroon kang maliit na pirasong mapa mula nung pang-15 siglo, ibig sabihin sa iyo na. Ang katotohanan nito, yung mga tao ninyo, nagpunta na siya sa South America, Central America, o meron din kayong mga mapa doon. Ba't hindi nyo inaangkin yon? Kasi hindi nyo kaya? Ayun. So dito ngayon nakikita na ay yaman-yaman na ng China, ang lakas-lakas na ng kanilang ekonomiya, ang lakas-lakas na ng kanilang military, magpakita naman kayo ng kaunting gila sa pamamagitan ng pakikitungong mabuti sa inyong mga kalapit bansa. Una-una, ang liliit natin. Maski na pagsama-samahin mo lahat ng bansa dito sa Southeast Asia, hindi naman natin kayang kalabanin ng China eh. Sobrang laki ng kanilang, alam mo bang, meron silang, ang mga sundalo nila, no, they have about 3 million standing army. The largest in the world, they have 600,000 more soldiers than America. So dito natin nakikita na, while they are still behind technologically, in terms of, let's say, America, ang ekonomiya nila umuusog na katakot-takot, ang kanilang impluensya lumalaki, huwag nila sanang sirain. At ipakita nila meron silang kakayahan na makitungo sa kanilang mga kapit bansa na maliliit. Okay? Alright. So we come to the next part of our agenda, and that is the developments of 2012. Nakita natin isang bagay naman na for which I think the President should be congratulated, and because they did well, yung natapos yung framework agreement with the MILF. Kanya lang, meron ngayong, there is a committee that is being formed that is supposed to finish by year-end, and there's a few days left. Kaya wala tayong masyadong nakikinig. Wow! Tingnan natin kung ano mangyayari ngayon in January, February. Kung matatapos nila yung mga annexes sa framework agreement na siya magpapakita sa atin ng sustansya ng framework agreement na yon. Sapagkat maraming issues doon na hindi nilagay sa framework agreement sapagkat kailangan pang pag-usapan, kailangan pang pagkasunduan. Eh, yun ang bagay na, yun ang mga mahihirap na talagang talakayin. Pangalawa, paano natin ipapasok dito yung mga indigenous people at saka people like the MNLF? MILF lang ba ang kakausap dito? Magkakaroon ba ng pagkakataon ng MNLF o kaya yung mga indigenous people like the Lumads, for example, to participate in the electoral process? And they do not have to call themselves Bangsamoro. They have their own identities. Alam po ninyo kung minsan itong problemang ito, especially in Muslim Mindanao, is a problem of identity. Sino ba sila? Ano ba, for example, what makes a Mindanaoan Muslim a Mindanaoan Muslim? Just as we asked, what makes a Filipino a Filipino? And napakadami nating ibang ginagampanan sa ating buhay. Diyan ka, asawa ka, anak ka, biyanan ka, katrabaho ka, boss ka. Depende sa sirkunstansya, siyang iiral ngayon yung identity natin na marahil na nararapat. So nakikita natin na pangkaraniwan lang naman na pabago-bago ang ating identity. But this agreement touches on what it means to be a Filipino. Nagagalak tayo na parang tinatanggap ng MILF dito na maski na sila Muslim, sila ay Pilipino. So wala nang issue ng paghihiwalay. Wala nang issue ng pag-iibang bansa o pag-iibang estado. The framework agreement avoids that issue, but there are still many other questions that need to be resolved, including what to do with the MNLF, what to do with the indigenous people like the Lumads. Kasi yung mga indigenous people, yung mga Lumads, marami din sila eh. Hindi natin pwedeng maliitin at sabihin na baliwala sila, hindi. Everybody is important. And therefore, sinasabi nga nila, yung ibang stakeholders daw sa Muslim Mindanao ng Bangsamoro, dapat kasama sa usapan at saka sa agreement. Let us hope that when the framework agreement is finally reached, kasama at pipirma lahat ng iba. Okay? So, yun po, we congratulate President Noynoy that his team was able to accomplish that. Let us hope and pray that that success will be met by another success when the annexes to the framework agreement are finally ironed out to the satisfaction of everybody. Katulad ng sinabi ko sa inyo, madalas po kailangan natin tingnan, katulad ng sinabi ng iba. Alam po ninyo, sabi nila, ang pinakamaganda raw na kasunduan, alam niyo kung ano? Kung lahat ng bahagi ng kasunduan, walang sobrang happy, walang sobrang satisfied. Everybody walks away na meron sabi, sana ganito, sana ganon. Pero nagkasundo na tayo dito. Ngayon, ipatupad natin and let's stick to that agreement and honor it because we have signed on it. So yun po ang hinahanap natin sanang mangyari. Alright, so after the discuss the impeachment, Scarborough, the framework agreement with the Bangsamoro or the MILF, anong ating ngayon susunod na pag-uusapan? Di ang pag-uusapan naman natin marahil dito, yung mga reforma sa ating halalan. Alam po ninyo, ilang beses na nating inisyo dito sa ating programa, ang problema tungkol sa PCOS machines. Na hanggang dumating sa Supreme Court yan, at nalulungkot tayo sapagkat hindi niresolba at binaliwala ng Supreme Court karamihan ng payo ng ating electronic industry and leaders how to make the PCOS machines reliable. Ang hindi ko nakikitang sinasagot, but I hope it's not gonna happen, meron silang ginawa kasi in the last election na labag sa ating saligang batas. At yun, pina-tabulate nila at pinagalmas nila yung mga votes, yung mga boto ng tao by Smartmatic, which is not and cannot be done constitutionally. Hindi, cannot be subcontracted. And let us hope that Chairman Brillantes and the rest of the commissioners today are not going to insist on subcontracting again the tabulation of votes in this coming election in 2013. Alright, ngayon, ang nakikita natin dito, binuksan nila at inagahan nila ang campaign, ang registration ng mga kandidato. I wonder why, if the purpose is to prohibit them from campaigning early, kung pahabain mo yung registration period, the moment nag-register ka, ayun, hindi ka na pwedeng mangampanya except during the campaign period. Kanya lang, napakadaming lumalabag pa din. Ayan, marami diyang advocacy dyan na lumalabas. One senator and another senator, mayroong mga congressman. Hindi dapat. And if the COMELEC is not going to be serious about implementing the campaign rules, they've got to, wala na bang mangyayari sa halalan na ito. Of course, ang collateral niya sa halalan po natin dito was the whole issue about the anti-dynasty provisions of the Constitution that Congress, both lower house and upper house, refused to define. Kanya po yan ang problema. Dapat yan, ang gagawin dyan, ma-define sana yan sapagkat ang ating Senate lineup po, huwag sanang magagalit yung ibang mga kandidato, punong-puno ng people who will form part of the dynasties in Congress as well as in the Senate. Magkapatid, mag-asawa, magkamag-anak, ay naku po. That is why our saligang batas did not, and say that they wanted an anti-dynasty provision. Well, I think the ones who framed the Constitution were not very smart. They should not have left it to Congress or the Senate to define what anti-dynasty means or consists of. Kano na kanilang ginawa, naandyan na yan. Pero yan nagpapakita naman ng ating mga senador at mga congressmen, wala pong paggalang sa ating saligang batas sapagkat napakalinaw. Nakalagay doon ang kanilang responsibilidad. Mahigit 20 taon na, wala pong gustong tumupad. Wala pong gustong gumawa. Aba, bakit naman ganyan? Sila pa naman ang ating tinitingala na susunod sa batas. Na siyang dapat pong nangyayari. Kanya dito dapat kayo, lahat kayo, nagte-text kayo ng maigi sa inyong congressman, mga senador. At sabihin ninyo, wag ito yun. Define that and do not be a candidate. Do not prolong. Stand up on principle here that respects the Constitution. Kasi marami sa kanila nagsasabi, hindi. Ay, paano? Gagalang ko ang karapatan ng aking kamag-anak na tumakbo for public office. Alam mo, there is such a thing as a hierarchy of rights and needs. And the needs and the rights of the country and the betterment of the country is a little bit more than an individual. And so we must be able to do that. Okay? Alright, so bago pa tayo magpatuloy, sandali lang po, meron tayong ilang paalala. Babalik po tayo.